to listen to this dog discussion right now. No worries, no worries. It was interesting. I'm sure we have some dog lovers in the group somewhere. So,
Yes.
all right. So tonight we have three speakers. We're covering marketing, and they have kind of divided the different areas of marketing up amongst themselves. So I'm not even going to try and nail down who's talking about what. I'm just going to do the introductions for all three of them. We have Nicole, and Nicole is a marketing expert that has over 20 years of experience with working with small and medium-sized businesses and helping them grow. She's worked in tech, finance, ed tech, ad agencies, and luxury retail industries. She offers practical, easy to understand, and sound strategies for small businesses. We personally use Nicole for help with our social media content. So Nicole does a lot of our posting for SB Pace on social media. Actually, she does almost all of it for us. We also have Matt. Matt is the owner and operator of Black Anchor Originals. Matt is an expert at logo design and branding. So Matt has actually done all of our logos. So he did the one for Academy, he did the one for SB Pace, he also did the one for BizQuick, and he has been collaborating with us on a very special logo for a project that is releasing on Friday for a client that we're pretty excited about. Matt has a long history of work in the design and logo space, and really is able to pull together nicely the difference between branding and logo. We recommended that you go back and listen to the podcast that we recorded with Matt fairly early on, where he talks a lot about logo and branding and the importance of the two to your business, but also the difference. And then finally, we have David. And David is a website and marketing expert. He's a certified story brand guide, which is super important in that it's helps with writing really, really good copy for not only your website, but for all of your marketing materials. David has owned and sold at least one business that I know of, and built thousands. I'm correct, I'm hoping, saying thousands of websites with him and his team. And he is going to give us some really good advice around websites, and I'm guessing story brand tonight. So thank you to all three of you for joining. We're really glad to have you with us today. And I know that the attendees are going to get a ton of really, really great information. And I do want to add in one other thing about David that I saw he just pinged me on, but I wasn't looking at my actual screen, where some of his clients include several Shark Tank contestants, the United States Golf Association, Bass Pro Shop, but most of the businesses that he worked with were small businesses. And I know Matt works with a lot of small businesses, and Nicole also helps support small businesses. So all three of them are experts in small business, and all three of them bring a ton of information tonight. So get your questions ready. Get them going in the chat. Same old story. Once you have them, just put who the question is for. I think in most cases, all of them could answer the questions, but you may want to just keep them to what content they're covering tonight. And I don't even know the order they're going in. I think they're kind of mixing it up a little bit. So Matt is first. All right. Have at it, Matt. Thanks.
All right. Thank you for the intro, Julie. I'm going to attempt to share my screen and my PowerPoint. I need to pull that up here. See if this works. Somebody nod their head. Nicole, nod your head if you're seeing this.
Yes.
All right, excellent.
You're
All
good.
right, thank you. I'm gonna move this little window over so I can see the full screen. So as Julie mentioned, my name is Matthew Reese. I own Black Anchor Originals, a business that I've had for 8 years now. I consider myself a lifelong creative. My primary function of Black Anchor Originals is actually in apparel screen printing, but I have worked in the graphic design industry, or some shape thereof, for most of my life as a working adult. Went to school and got a degree in graphic design, and have used that in a bunch of different applications. So what I'm going to talk about today, if this, oops, sorry, hold on. what we will be covering today. We'll be talking about what is a brand and how do you get one? Your logo, is it badass or just bad? So these are the two areas I'm going to cover, and then hopefully some of the things should lead into what David and Nicole are going to cover as well. But these are two areas that I believe a lot of small businesses struggle with. And I first want to congratulate you all for taking the step in working with Julie and Corey and being part of this academy and hopefully taking your business to the next level. Or if you're starting a business, starting out really on the right foot. It's really important as you're starting, if you're starting out with a new business. So most people know the old phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And if you've heard that phrase before, you've probably heard the partner phrase, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. This is something that I've really grown to experience myself in the past several years, especially probably the last 3 or 4 years as a business owner. And I like to take it one step further and say it's not who knows you and what they, I'm sorry, it's not who knows you, it's who knows you and what they know about you. And to me, this really is the foundation of branding. And what they feel about you, this happens to be your brand. A lot of people look at branding or a company brand and feel like it's your logo, it's your product, it's things like that. Unfortunately, that's kind of off the mark. Your brand is not your product. It's not your logo. It's not your website. It's not your social media. It's not your marketing, even though that's what we're talking about, and this is marketing. And it's not your employees. I'm going to be using Chick-fil-A a little bit as an example here tonight, because hopefully most people are familiar with Chick-fil-A. And if you're not familiar with Chick-fil-A, there's probably some fast food restaurant like it in your neck of the woods. I'm not sure where everybody's located geographically. I know Chick-fil-A is not necessarily nationwide, and it is primarily in the South, but if you're familiar with them, it's a great example. They do a great job with their branding. So your brand, it is what the customer feels when they repeatedly encounter those things. So I'm going to jump back for a second. So again, it's not your product and your logo, your website, and all those things that a lot of people associate with your brand, especially your logo, especially your product. But what it is it's how your customer feels and has an emotional connection to your business anytime they encounter it. So that could be, if again, let's use the example of Chick-fil-A, it could be every time they see a Chick-fil-A ad, could be every time you go to Chick-fil-A and purchase a meal with your family. So this is really what your brand is. And what a lot of people struggle with is it's not really something that you have ultimate control over. When we're going to talk about that, it's really something you have influence on, but it's not necessarily something you have ultimate control over. Your customers will actually define what your brand ultimately is in the marketplace. The reason why I have feels and repeatedly underlined is because, again, this is an emotional response to your business and every different way that you touch your consumer. Repeatedly is because that is the best way to influence your brand, which we'll talk about. The more you do something, the more you get known for it. This starts to build what your brand is in the marketplace. In the terms of Chick-fil-A, if you're familiar with Chick-fil-A, some of the things that I kind of came up with, the food is tasty, the service is convenient and polite, it's a good value, it's fast and efficient, and there are family values associated with Chick-fil-A. And these are things that, especially fast and efficient. If you've noticed anything in social media, there's people posting things about, well, if Chick-fil-A was running the election, all the counts would have been done long ago. And that's because Chick-fil-A, through their practices, have actually become known as the experts in quickly and efficiently taking your order, delivering your food, and sending you on your way to enjoy their chicken nuggets. If you've ever sat in a Chick-fil-A drive-through, the lines can be long, but they move quickly through. And it is really kind of a example of their processes and their efficiencies, but that also starts to develop their brand, or ties into their brand. I'm gonna go back for a second. I talked about repeatedly. I like to remind people that the word brand, I think about it a lot in terms of livestock and kind of the old school branding of your cattle, or whatever livestock you have. And it's kind of a repeated process that ingrains something into, in this case, the consumer. And if what you do repeatedly is not good, that will be ingrained in the consumer's mind. And that's what they will think of when they encounter your business. If you do something good, in the example of Chick-fil-A, these are all things that are good, positive things for most people. These are the things that end up being ingrained in the consumer's mind. Your brand, actually, whether you're actively working to develop and influence your brand, is going to evolve with or without your input, simply by how you do business. This is a personal example for me that I have put up. At the beginning of the pandemic, I kind of paused my business very briefly and had to kind of figure out what I was going to do and how I was going to operate with state shutdowns and a lot of my customers not necessarily needing, or basically putting their orders on hold as they were trying to figure out what they were going to do. One of the things I then decided to do was create a system where I could sell t-shirts for local businesses, create an online site for them, and basically a portal where a lot of local businesses could offer a shirt. We took care of all the fulfillment, shipping, and then that business would get $10 out of the $20 cost of the t-shirt, would go directly back to that business whose logo was on the shirt. Without my doing, somebody had contacted the local newspaper and let them know what I was doing and what the program was about. The local newspaper then reached out to me, did an article that landed on the front page of the paper. That then was picked up by a local television news channel who ran a 2-minute story on the news. And then it was subsequently then also the story was picked up and told several other ways through some online blogs and podcasts. So this had a huge impact for my business. And going back to the first part where I talked about it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And it's not who knows you, it's who knows you and what they know about you and what they feel about what they know about you. This was huge for my business because prior to the newspaper article and the subsequent television article, I knew plenty of businesses, and I knew plenty of businesses that needed help. And I knew consumers, I knew people that would probably want to buy t-shirts, but not nearly as many as could be reached by the television and the newspaper. And once the newspaper article came out, it really flipped the dynamic of how I was working through this program. Prior to that, I was reaching out to businesses and I was helping them reach out to their consumers to try to promote the t-shirt sales. Once the newspaper article came out, things kind of reversed. And now I was being known in the local community as somebody who was helping other small businesses who were struggling. And so rather quickly, because of what I was doing and how I was now being known in the marketplace and in the community, I was now receiving a lot of incoming calls, both from customers wanting to buy shirts and businesses that wanted to partner with me in this program. So that's just a quick real world example of how that has impacted me. So your brand is being built daily, like it or not, and whether you're influencing it or not. the things that you do, your practices, your business, the way you treat your customers, the how you handle your phone call, the product that you put out, your packaging, everything is being influenced, whether you are intentional about the direction or not. The strength of your brand is measured by the differentiation in the marketplace, as well as your alignment with your business avatar. And I don't know that business avatar is necessarily something that we've talked about in this course yet. I believe a customer avatar has probably been discussed, and it's a similar concept. It's basically your personality of what you intend your business to be. Hopefully, if you're starting out your business, you're starting out with a clear idea of maybe your core values, where you fit in the marketplace, your value proposition for your product, maybe just something as simple as some descriptive words that would just, describe how you want to be viewed as a business, and also would include, who's your ideal tribe, who is the community that you want to connect with and be a part of. These are things that, whether you are starting your business or whether you're currently in business and you haven't defined, are going to need to be defined in order for you to then be intentional about building your brand, because these are all things that you are going to then need to target. So again, your brand is going to grow every day that you operate business. But your strength of that is going to, again, be how you differentiate yourself in the marketplace and how you align what you do daily with what you want to be as a business. I run a very casual business. My business can be messy at times. It's not uncommon for me to be wearing shorts and a t-shirt pretty much 9 months out of the year. And that's fine. That's okay with the feeling I want my customers to have. I'm okay with them seeing that's a casual business. I'm not wearing a shirt and tie. I'm very casual with the way I deal with my customers. It doesn't mean I'm unprofessional. It just means that it's not a very polished workplace or a very polished interaction. Again, doesn't necessarily mean it's not professional. But again, as you start to identify the things that you want to be as a business, then you can then target those and start to build your brand intentionally. So once you know what you want to be known for and by who, you can set out to influence and build your brand. Again, I mentioned before, you really don't have ultimate control of what the consumer thinks about you and your business, but you certainly have influence. And this is what I consider to be building your brand. There's a lot of different thoughts on whether you can really build a brand, and absolutely, I feel that you can. I was thinking about the analogy. I have 3 children. Certainly as a parent, we all raise our child to hopefully be a certain way, act a certain way, be respectful, be a learner, be caring and kind, things like that, be energetic, whatever, different things that you want for your child. But ultimately, we don't really have control over how our child will act in the world. Okay, we can do our best. And our brand is similar. We can do everything we can by utilizing strong marketing. We can utilize professional systems and nice invoices and quality websites and making sure our packaging is good and our customer service is top notch. But ultimately, what our brand becomes is what our customers know us as. And so that's what's really important. If you find that your brand is kind of going in a direction that you don't want, then you need to identify why and address it. If you feel that you're being known in the industry for something and that's not what you want to be known for, then you need to find ways to address it. If you're doing Facebook marketing or websites, hopefully you're getting some kind of feedback. and you're checking your customer reviews and things like that. And that's a good way for you to realize, or for you to identify ways that you may or may not be on brand with what you want to be. Again, your brand is supported by your product, your logo, your website, your social media, your marketing, your employees, and all the different ways that you as a company have contact with your consumer or your potential consumer. I have the quote up top. If you've been to Chick-fil-A and you've ever said thank you to somebody at Chick-fil-A, you always get the response of "my pleasure." And that's not an accident. That's something that they have built into their operations. It's a way that they do business, but that reinforces the politeness and the professionalism and the care that they have for their customers. So again, I think a certain way about Chick-fil-A, but it's influenced by the things that they do as a daily in their daily operations. So there's some other examples here of brands and how they kind of differentiate themselves. Sorry, let me jump back real quick. One of the things I had on their differentiation, I had Tesla. You know, Tesla's a great example of the differentiation in the marketplace. You know, coming out and being a eco-friendly brand, electric driven cars and vehicles, and being an innovator. And that's what they've intended to be, and that's what they do, and that's what drives how they operate as a business. And so that reinforces what they want to be as a brand, and that certainly is shown by most people's recognition of Tesla and their opinion of Tesla in the marketplace. I have this example: Scion, Toyota, and Lexus. Again, differentiation. These are all three car brands, and if you're not a car person, you may or may not know this, but they're actually all part of the same family of car brands. We have Scion, Toyota, and Lexus, but they're all a little bit different. Scion I identified as more of a value brand. It's what I would consider to be the entry level of Toyota. They only have a couple styles. They're usually a lower price point, little less flair, definitely appeal to a younger market, and that's their place in the marketplace. Toyota, on the other hand, again, is probably built, or at least in my opinion, on value and dependability. They have a much broader product offering, and that is actually kind of the core of their business, or core of this family. And that is what they market on, and that's the target market they go after, are people that are buying on value, dependability, style, and again, maybe a little bit older customers, but then they also have some, you know, some products in their market range that are also targeted towards the newer buyers. And then you have Lexus. You'll also notice that all three of these logos are all shaped the same and all have a little bit of similarity to them, and I don't think that's by accident. But then you have Lexus, which I defined as being a luxury and dependability, or the top level of Toyota. I happen to own several Toyota and Lexus products, and I talked to a lot of Toyota and Lexus owners, and many people will tell you that there are certain Lexus vehicles that are just basically Toyotas with nicer amenities. So again, this is where they've positioned themselves in the marketplace. This is how they've differentiated themselves, and their marketing, their customer experience, all of these things will reinforce this brand differentiation, even though all three of these companies are very similar and owned by the same parent company. So this actually also leads us very well into our logoing. I'm sorry, hold on, one more slide there. Your brand will evolve as your business evolves. In this example, I have Apple Computers, which originally was known very well to be the very simple, easy to use computer, which is still something that they hang their hat on, but now they're also known for innovation, sleek styling, and things of that nature, as well as also being reliable, dependable, and easy to use. So your brand will evolve as your business evolves, and so could your logo. So this is going to kind of lead me into the logo portion of my presentation. What you're seeing right here is actually an evolution of the Apple logo. starting in the very first Apple logo at the top left corner down to the current Apple logo in the bottom right-hand corner. So as Julie mentioned, logos are something that I have designed many of. I've reworked some logos for companies. I've designed plenty from scratch, and it's kind of a passion of mine. I always say, if you look at logos the way I look at logos, you would probably think I might have a sickness, but that's okay. It has served me well in working with my customers. And so it's something I really enjoy doing. It's something I enjoy talking about. As she mentioned, there is a podcast episode where I kind of get into a little bit more detail on logos. I'm going to touch on a few things here, probably in the next 10 minutes before I turn it over. So again, your logo is probably one of the most seen assets of your business, or again, if you're starting out, it will be, and often the most misunderstood and mistreated. Biggest misconception about logos, and it's really happens a lot even with seasoned logo designers, is the goal of your, or the purpose of your logo is really to identify your business, not to explain it. In that order, these two examples on the screen are actually a little backwards. In this example, Hayden Landscaping, the logo to the right really identifies the business much better than the one on the left. The one on the left is really an attempt to explain the business to the consumer. They've got images of the tree and a sun and a field of grass with multiple lines in it. And there's a gradation in the text, which kind of gives you kind of a sunset type feel. Again, to me, that's an example of a bad logo, which I'll get into a little bit more reasoning why, where the one on the right-hand side is a much more effective logo. Again, it's not really, other than the tagline of landscaping, it does not really explain the business. It simply identifies it. And that's really what your logo is intended to do. Unfortunately, a lot of companies have logos made. They fall into the trap that they want their logo to have certain imagery because they feel like your logo is supposed to be that billboard for their customer, and the customer is supposed to know immediately everything that business does just by simply looking at their logo. And when you do that, you fall into a trap that causes other problems down the road. Your logo is designed to differentiate you in the marketplace. This picture of two vehicles works really well. Those two box trucks are almost identical, but clearly if you've done any shipping or receiving or ordered anything from Amazon or anywhere, you will know that there's a difference between FedEx and UPS, although they both offer basically the same services. There's definitely a difference in the way they operate. And so these logos, and as well as their color schemes, are designed to differentiate them to the consumer. So my top tip for logos, and where a lot of people fall short, is your logo must work in one color. These two examples, if you can envision basically taking every color in each one of these logos, I didn't do this ahead of time, I could have tried, but if you take each one of these colors in the logo and just make it one solid color, let's say black, you will find out very quickly that these logos do not work at all. I came across this as being one of the biggest problems in logos really as I was printing apparel. There's a lot of times when you need to print apparel and you need to utilize your logo as a single color. With apparel screen printing, it's a process where every color requires another screen. So the more colors, the more expensive it is. And it's still a very common usage. And if you have a logo like the two shown here, the Sun King Brewery and Plumber 99, and then you're asked to print it as a single color, it simply will not work. And you will have to revert back to a very simplified version, or somebody's going to have to rework it, or you're going to end up with basically your name and text. And one of the biggest areas I run into this, just to kind of give you an example, is printing shirts for 5Ks. When 5Ks were being ran pretty much every other weekend, it's not uncommon for having sponsors. If you have a business and you want to sponsor a 5K, you know, your business logo will be presented typically on the back of the shirt in a single color, whether it's white on a dark color shirt or black on a light color shirt or some variation of that. And if your logo does not work in a one color, it will never work there. There's other marketing opportunities for promotional products and things like that that are really driven towards a one color logo. So in my opinion, if your logo does not work in one color, it really is a fail as a logo. And it's just going to cause problems down the road. So your logo must work in one color, much like these logos. Now, these are not the logo colors that you typically might see them in, but you can also recognize that as simply black and white, you still recognize this is Apple, Nike, and McDonald's. They do use color in their branding, but it's not color dependent, meaning you can see this logo and still see the representation of the company that it identifies. Your logo can be more than one color, as shown here in Liberty Mutual Insurance. It's actually one of my favorite logos for some reason. I don't know. I really like the representation of the Statue of Liberty. I think it's very simple and clean. But again, here, it's a two-color logo primarily, and it works perfectly well as a one-color logo. This case, I use blue. It could easily be black. It could easily be white on a dark background. It still works. You're not losing anything by having it as a single color. Another great example is our friends at BizQuick, Julie and Corey's podcast. And that was something we specifically did in designing this logo. It's something I always do in designing logos, make sure that it works in one color. Most of their marketing, they use the two-color version that's shown on the right. It's black and red, or if it's on a dark background, we have a similar version, which is white and red. However, they have a one-color version, and it works just as well. So the other thing about a logo is a lot of people don't quite understand or sometimes miss the mark on is there's three basic types of logos. Well, there's a few others, but these are the three that I would suggest that you focus on and that are the most effective. You have a word mark, and some logos are simply just a word. The Google logo is simply just a word. Amazon really is a word, but then they added the arrow, which is also a smile face, and that would be kind of reminiscent of the Nike swoosh in this example. So your word mark is the word Nike. Your logo or trademark is the swoosh in the Nike example, and their tagline is "Just Do It." And you can go throughout Nike's product offering and throughout their marketing and see that they use these three elements, sometimes all three together, although it's usually one or two paired together, usually the word mark and the trademark, and then also the trademark and the tagline is how I typically see them. The word logo actually is tied to, I think, a Greek or Latin word for word. So logo actually is a little bit misleading when you look at the reference. So the trademark, the Nike swoosh, is not a word, but things kind of become synonymous, whether it's a word mark like Nike, like Google, like Amazon, that has become synonymous as a logo. So I really like logo designs that utilize all three of these. I think a word mark is really a great way to differentiate yourself. It needs to be clean and simple, easy to read. A trademark is something that is amazing to be able to utilize, and I like to consider it your visual nickname. Nike has built a brand that they can effectively use the swoosh in place of the combination word and trademark, and people still understand it as Nike. So again, it's kind of like a shorthand. It's a business nickname, for lack of a better term. And to me, that is kind of the ultimate goal of logos and branding, is that you would then be able to utilize that trademark, or some would call it an icon. You know, in the Apple example, they don't even use the word Apple anymore. It's just simply their Apple graphic. And again, that's, to me, is the ultimate goal. I'm going to try to speed through this here. I'm already at 30 minutes. So a good logo also will observe good design habits. I'm not going to get into a ton of different design rules and things that you should and shouldn't do. This is just an example of a logo that I did for a friend of ours, Salty Britches, and some things that we did to kind of work with her logo. Again, it needs to observe good design habits and also reinforce the brand. If you take a quick look at this, a few things we did is we adjusted the spacing in the word salty. We also rotated things a little bit. And then the word britches, when you saw the logo on packaging and pretty much all of their social media, it's always has a orientation. The salty was up, and that's kind of how you read, left to right, top to bottom. Unfortunately, we don't typically read around in a circle like that. So it kind of made it hard to read the word britches. So we opted to, again, rotate things a little bit. Again, left to right, we're reading salty across the top. Left to right on the bottom, we have britches. The other very small thing, and the reason why I said it reinforces the brand that we did, is we took and smoothed out the rough texture of the hand that's inside the logo. And somebody might say, well, that really, who cares? What difference does that make? Well, from a design standpoint, one, it works better with the text. The text is a very clean, simple text. There's nothing else rough about the logo design. And also the bigger issue here is that Salty Britches is an anti-chafing cream. So it is designed to rid you of rough, even potentially dry skin and abrasive abrasion, from your skin, whether you're running, biking, cycling, surfing, things like that. So having an image that is a much smoother skin made more sense than having something that looks like rough skin. So again, these are all small things that should be and could be considered in your logo. And then the biggest one right now is keep it simple and clean. You really have a very short opportunity to identify yourself with a consumer. Social media is making that window even smaller, both physically and in time. So you want to keep your logo clean and simple. These are several versions of the Apple logo, and I like to say the ones to the left are kind of in the height of the web boom, where people were starting to use a lot of gradients and things like that, and kind of give these really kind of cool effects, because people now had phones and much better displays on their computers that supported those types of graphics. But the trend now is, again, going back to a much simpler graphic. You need to be able to be identified quickly, easily, and simply to your consumer. An example of this is I found this website where they took 150 people and asked them to recreate the Apple logo. And what you see here is people trying to recreate the Apple logo basically by memory. And it's actually pretty amazing how well so many of the people do. This is kind of put in order based on less to more accurate. So as you look down towards the bottom of this, bottom right-hand side of the screen, you see a lot of, take away people's potential lack of artistic ability, but you see a lot of people that can easily identify and replicate that Apple logo. So if you have a very complicated logo that people cannot recall and even replicate, there's a good chance that they're not identifying it very quickly either. So that is all I have. Unless anybody has any questions, my suggestion is to go forth and be badass. I'll have to figure out how to see if anybody has any questions on this thing.
You don't get to do the questions yet, Matt.
Okay, cool. All right, well, the questions at the end.
Until the end. We save them till the end.
That's what I thought. All right, so do I need to stop anything for my share?
Yeah, you need to.
All right,
yeah.
Done.
Who is next? Is it? Oh, so David is next. So just a couple I want to ask one quick thing before we flip over to David, which was nice job, Matt. But would you say that the information that you give about branding, we were talking about we have a ideal customer profile, and then you have your ideal business profile. Mm-hmm. Ideal business profile could easily be correlated back to culture, right? That's the thing that I thought of as you talked about that.
Yes.
Right. So which was what we covered in week 1, where we talked about the culture of your business and building that culture. And that goes really well with what you talked about with branding. So nice connection there.
Yes, thank you.
We'll hopefully get some questions coming in. What I really want people to ask about is Chick-fil-A. So it feels like you might be an expert at Chick-fil-A. I'm hoping we get some questions on that. All right, that takes us to David. Take it away, David.
All right. I knew that following Matt would be a little tricky. He's got such great design skills, and my presentation is lots of words. Can everybody see this okay? Julie? Matt, give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen.
All we can
I'm not
see is
seeing
that it's
anything.
black. You can't see anything, David.
Okay, 1 second. I shared the wrong one. Let me do a new share.
Okay.
And that looks like the right one there. Is that better?
Yes.
There we go.
There you go.
I'll just go full screen. You're good.
All right. Well, I don't have any fun pictures, and now I want Chick-fil-A, so that's fun. Okay, thank you all for having me out today. I really am passionate about kind of this getting started topic for business owners with websites. I've got my video camera on. If it starts to flicker too bad, I may have to downgrade the quality. The internet here in Fairhope, Alabama is a little bit leaves a little bit to be desired sometimes. So let me know if that becomes annoying, and I'll be sure to switch it. But one thing I just kind of want to start with is that how things have changed. I started building websites in 1999. I started my company in 2003, and back then a website was kind of like building a fortress that you're going to pass down to generations of family and kin. And since that time, things have absolutely changed so much that a website is important, but it's no longer the center of your universe. So with that, I've got a lot of slides, and I'm going to try to tell you some stories as we go. Questions for the end, and buckle up. Here we go. The first thing I wanted to talk about was crafting your message. Julie mentioned earlier that I am a StoryBrand guide. StoryBrand is one of those things that I found a little bit later in my career that if I had had it all along, it would have changed everything. In my business, we were waiting on the client to tell us things about their business so often that we couldn't move forward. The project would stop. I think at some points we had 50 to 60 websites in progress, and 90% were waiting on the client to give us information. What StoryBrand would have allowed us to do is to actually create the content for them. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But the main thing I want you to think about is in a story, the hero, which is what everybody wants to think that they are, is the strongest person. They think it's the strongest person in the story. We want to be Luke Skywalker. We want to be Rocky. But the reality is that person has a problem that needs to be solved. And if they didn't have a problem, there wouldn't be a movie. I mean, think of any movie you want to that doesn't have conflict, and there's not a movie there. There's no story. If Liam Neeson's daughter didn't get kidnapped, we wouldn't have had Taken. If Apollo Creed didn't challenge Rocky, we wouldn't have had Rocky. So there's things that happen to a hero in a story that cause them to need help. And that's our role as marketers these days is we are there to help guide the hero and give them the tools they need to win the day and to be the hero of their story. You aren't the hero of anybody else's story. I hate to break that to people, but you're the hero of your story. And when somebody comes up to a party and says, "What do you do?" and you say, "Well, I started the company 25 years ago. And we're up for this award. We want the best places to work." People tune out because that's not helping them. So the reality is when we talk about messaging, everything today, keep in the back of your mind that it's got to be about the problem you solve, not the service you sell. People don't really want to wear braces. They want straight teeth. So when you're selling orthodontic work, you don't sell, "We've got the coolest braces and you're going to wear these for 6 months and it's going to hurt when we tighten them up." You sell the fact that you're going to have an amazing smile. So I could talk for 3 hours about StoryBrand alone, but as a starting point, I'll put a link here or a note here. There's a YouTube video you can look up from Donald Miller called Entree Leadership. And he's got a unit there called the one-liner exercise. And that will actually walk you through about a 20-minute workshop that will help you come up with your one-liner. And your one-liner is a simple, clear, concise statement that tells somebody what you do, the problem you solve, and the vision of success they get from when they work with you. So remember, this is not about you. It's about the client and how to help them get what they want. So that's boiled down pretty quick, but we'll kind of come back to this as we need to. A couple ground rules about when you start in the web world. These are just things that I've learned along the way from watching clients make some mistakes. Number one is keep track of everything yourself. If you have a cousin get a domain name for you and your nephew set up your email stuff and all these pieces start to get out of your control, they will stop you later on. So it's really important that you have maybe a Google spreadsheet where you've got track of all the different services you have. My advice to people is have one email address for when you work in your business and have one email address for when you work on your business. So like I always have an admin at Salt and Lime Marketing and admin at Ziki, so that I always knew that that was my admin account, and anything that I had to do with running my business, or I had accounts out there for hosting or domain names or email marketing or any of those things would flow through to admin, because you may also end up needing to share that account or access with other people at some point. So you don't want to have that commingled in with the account that you're using to run your business. The other thing, this is an amazing one, is know every password. I watch people who set things up and can't find information. They don't know the password to it, the domain name. Well, I think I reserved that 3 years ago through some guy named Bill. I don't know where it is. So make sure you can get into everything. Simple like things have happened where I had a client whose website server went down. Well, we could have changed them over to a new server in minutes if they knew the password to their domain name account. They didn't. And as a result, they were down for a week. So those things really matter. And it's a simple thing to say, I'm not going to worry about it, but it can come back to haunt you. Again, I'd create a Google sheet. I'd put everything in there. If you want to use an encryption on it, you can, but that way you've got access to it whenever you need it. The other thing is, please don't take the cheapest route early on. Things like cheapydomains.com or one of these domain name companies that's going to save you $2 a year. It's just not worth it in the long run. Use brands that are relatively well known. They may be a few dollars more, but Google, GoDaddy, these guys are good at what they do. When you start using something like 99 domains and things like that, you're going to end up getting what you pay for, and it will come back to you later on. Another thing, kind of like what Matt was talking about, I really encourage people to invest in decent business cards. As a digital guy who talks a lot about digital and internet, I think that in today's world, having a great business card is worth its weight in gold. The other neat thing you can do in your business cards, and we'll talk about later, is put a QR code on it on the back, so people can just zap your card and they get access to your website or whatever you want to share with them. But I just always think that we're able to save so much time and energy on things like letterhead and envelopes these days, but put the money into a good business card. Okay, domain names. This is where everything starts. If you don't have a domain name yet, this will help guide you a little bit. If you do have one, you've got some of these mistakes, and we can fix them early. The first thing is, I really believe in .com. It's hard to find some .com names these days. If your business makes sense with a .biz, then that's certainly fine. If it makes sense with a .io, that's fine. But not many people here need to be a .net or a .org or a whatever, unless it really makes sense for your business. The other thing is, check and see if a competitor is sitting on a .com. I feel a lot better about giving somebody an alternate .io or .us extension if they don't have a direct competitor sitting on the .com, because people will default to the .com. They'll type in your name, .com, and all of a sudden they're on somebody else's website and you've never even knew they went to yours. So if that site is non-existent, or it's obviously not a true competitor to your business, and they land there, they'll go back and figure it out, or take the time to go, I made a mistake. But I would really encourage you to check the people who've got the things that surround you. I don't like domain names that require me to with dashes or things in them. People will forget those things. Again, using a mainstream service like GoDaddy or Google or Network Solutions to buy domain names, they're a lot more flexible with the services you can get, like privacy protection and routing things different places. It's a lot easier to hook up things to these services because people integrate with them. So later, when you get your website set up, these domains will make things work a lot more automatically. Another thing too, this is a little weird one I learned is if you use numbers or other things that could be spelled different ways, try to grab both names. You can always redirect them. The example I've given here is, if I told you my company was Fifth Avenue Homes, which is it? Is it 5th, Ave Homes? Is it Fifth Ave Homes, Fifth Avenue Homes, Fifth Avenue? There's lots of ways that could be. So think about making sure the one you have is, pick whichever one you want to market, but make the other ones resolve to your website. And also, again, make sure competitors aren't sitting on a variation. You could get hit with a cease and desist if you're sitting on something somebody's got trademarked. So it's a good idea to just invest a little bit of time in researching and making sure you're not going to get caught up in somebody else's world. I recently had a project. We had a domain, the foodexplorerclub.com, which is a project that we're working on, and we got a cease and desist from the Explorer Clubs in New York, and we were able to make a position that we weren't going to vacate it, but it cost way more money than it should have for really no reason except they thought our domain name was too close to theirs. Bunch of children, if you ask me. So anyway, if somebody is using a domain name, that's not great. If it's not in use, but they've got like a coming soon, or it just resolves to name not found, that's the best. So if somebody's using it, try to stay away from it. There's a neat tool called whois.com. If you want to look up and see who's got a domain name that you may want. It can, used to give you a lot of good information. Today, everything's kind of hidden behind privacy stuff, but a lot of times domain names can be purchased away from people if they're not using it. So keep that in mind. Email. This is one of those things too. I really encourage you to set up an email with your domain. It makes you look so much more professional than if you're using mycoolbusiness8413@gmail.com. It just sends an impression. So I think that there are products out there for like Google Mail is about $5 a month. It comes with virus scanning and all kind of software protections and all these great things and storage, and well worth the $5 a month. If you're a Windows user, they have Outlook 365 that works the same way. But you can tie these names to your own email and look like just the same as a Fortune 500 company without any extra effort. I also encourage people to set up a solid email signature for your email. Part of that message from above, we talked about the your messaging, but putting a signature in your email with kind of a brand promise on there, fantastic smiles guaranteed or something like that if you're an orthodontist, and make sure you have an email in your phone signature as well. A lot of people will set up great signatures on their desktop, but they'll forget to do it on their phone. Another tool that I use personally, Grammarly. If you've not seen it, it's fantastic. It's free. For one version, you can pay for a more expensive, a better version, but it will actually do grammar checks for you. So as you're sending out emails or writing documents, it will actually make suggestions on how to improve what you're saying and how to get your intention right. So I really like that product and encourage folks to use it when possible. Websites. And I'm moving really fast. I don't really have a way to see if anybody is okay with that. I don't know how to turn a chat on. So if Julie or Cord will wave at me if I need to do something different, that would be great.
You're fired, David. Your presentation is really, really good. This is great stuff. So we can circle back to anything. They have questions at the end. So keep moving at your pace. You're good.
All right, buckle up. It gets faster. Here we go. Okay, a little legal stuff. Having been a business owner for a long time and having seen many clients end up on the wrong side of legal issues, here's the benefit of that knowledge. You need to have things on your website. You need to have a privacy policy. Your policy can be, we don't give a crap about your privacy. We're going to sell your name to everybody we can. If that's your policy, that's your policy, but you got to have it. Most policies say, we protect your stuff. We won't sell it to anybody. That's great. But go to a website, look at other privacy policies. Do not cut and paste one onto your website. I had people cut and paste things off my website onto their websites, including my company name over the years. So keep an eye on things like privacy policies. If you're doing e-commerce, you'll need a return policy. Most credit card companies will not give you the ability to process credit cards until they know what your return policy is. Again, the policy can be we don't take returns. But as long as that's stated where the public can read it, you're fine. Check for legal disclaimers. If you're a law firm or in the legal field, you've got to have disclaimers about the quality of service. Doctors have to have things about care and HIPAA guidelines. Make sure you are using open source photography or stock photos, if you don't use things that you've taken, don't just go to Google, do an image search and right click and save. We will find you. My wife's a photographer and we're really picky about this. And lots of photographers are getting way better at finding people using their images without consent. So please make sure you're using stuff that's paid for. iStock photo is, I think you pay about $3 to $5 a picture. So it's not the end of the world to buy a $20 package and have great pictures to use, or take good pictures yourself. That also goes for things like plugins on your website. A lot of times people will use free plugins. That can be a little bit dangerous. If you're having somebody build you a website, a lot of these agreements, they're entering on your behalf. In other words, they're signing off on it, but you're responsible. So if your website company goes in and takes 5 pictures off of Apple's website, puts them on yours, you're getting a phone call from Apple, not them. Fonts are also another thing that can be open source, but if you need to pay for them, then pay for them. Again, they're not expensive, but just those little things can come up. And the other thing that's kind of a new hot topic is ADA compliance. Again, I could probably talk for 2 hours about ADA compliance, but there are some things coming down the pipe where they are trying to really enforce some litigation around making sure your site is accessible for people with disabilities. I believe we should absolutely do everything we can to make websites accessible. There are a lot of lawsuits right now that are being thrown at people because things are not accessible and they're not really respecting the intention of the order. There's some challenges, but for what y'all are doing right now, just take some steps, and we'll have a whole slide on this about ADA compliance. Other thing too is make sure you have an SSL installed. Most hosting platforms will do it automatically. So if you're using something like Squarespace or Shopify, it'll happen automatically for you. But if you're using your own hosting, you may need to ask about an SSL. That's a little lock in the corner that tells people that your site is secure. It used to be that if you didn't have one, but you didn't ask any information, it was fine. Now Google puts a big old X on your site and lets people know your site's not secure, even if you're not asking them anything. It's just one of those things that they're kind of doing to validate that you are who you say you are and you are where you're supposed to be. So just little thing to point out, make sure you've got an SSL on your website. Website platforms. There's lots of things to think about. The first and foremost is how often are you going to change it? Because once you have a website, it's not done. I don't believe that any website's ever truly finished. So there's always going to be changes and updates. And so the most important thing you need to think about when picking out how to build your website is who's going to do that? How often does it happen? At my agency, we actually sold a hosting package that included support time so that the client could just email us. We'd make the changes for them and they wouldn't have to worry about it. We actually did rollover time, which helped a lot of clients out who didn't do a lot of changes very frequently. But just be thinking about how you want to change that homepage picture, or how you want to put a holiday special on your site, or how do you want to update the blog. If you're going to do it yourself, that's fantastic, but make sure you're building the site in a platform that you understand how to work. We would routinely do classes on how to use WordPress, but every site's unique, and how one person's homepage rotator is set up is different than somebody else's. So if you do have someone build your website, get them to give you a lesson on how to make changes. One thing I'd make a note here, and we'll talk about SEO in a minute, is that page speed is important. So when you have a website, you've got kind of 2 pieces. One is the website itself, and 2 is the hosting for the website. Hosting is where it sits on a server. Most people are familiar with Amazon Web Cloud. There's a bunch of hosting companies. Even Google hosts website these days. But you need to make sure your page speed is up there, because if the site is slow, Google will ding you. So the other thing to think about is that design trends do change. So as design changes come around, you may want to think about how are you changing your site. I think Matt gave a great example of how Apple's logo was kind of beveled and had a little drop shadow, and over time it kind of flattened. That trend will change again. Personally, I think a website has got about a 2-year shelf life these days, 3 at the outside, because things just change. Years ago, we did a lot of immersive sites where it was like you were walking into someplace, and like when we did a site for I worked for Margaritaville, we did a site for Jimmy Buffett's sister's restaurant called Lulu's. We actually went and took pictures of all the things in the restaurant and bar, and we used those as backgrounds and things on the websites. When you went on the website, it was like you were sitting in the restaurant. All the borders around things were actually lifted from there. The signs were done the same way. Nowadays, the trend right now, most websites, big box, 3 small boxes underneath it, some text, another box, some options. I mean, it's pretty standard when you look at websites these days. It's there's not a whole lot of variance going on, and the main reason that is because of mobile. The website's got to be set to look really good on a mobile device. We'll talk about analytics in a minute, but knowing who your audience is and how they're accessing your site will influence that decision, because if most people are coming via desktop, you have a lot more room. And guess what? Your site goes like this. If they're coming off the phone, now your website's like this. So we got to think about how things lay in there differently and where priority goes. I put down here a couple of different options. Most websites today are built in WordPress. I think they'll claim that there's 60% or 70% of all the websites in the United States or in the world are built on WordPress. WordPress began as a blogging platform. It is a very solid platform. It has become more complicated to use over the years. WordPress works off of you selecting a theme. You install a theme, you put in your content, and you can install plugins to do all the heavy lifting for you. So things like a map, or things like a form, or things like an image rotator can all be done with plugins. Most plugins are free. Some you pay for. If you want to hook it up to Instagram, pull your Instagram feed in, there's a plugin for that. Again, some plugins are $10 a year, some are $50, use it forever, some are free. Keep in mind, the free ones aren't always going to be maintained. I had a client who did an e-commerce site. They spent a year building it. They installed a plugin that did tax calculations. They had 4 different locations, and each location was in a different county. Therefore, each location had a different tax rate. And this particular plugin would go in and look at the zip code of where the store was and calculate the proper sales tax that was to be charged for shopping at each particular store. They couldn't get it to work, They called us. We looked at it. We said, well, the company who built it was out of Greece, and they went out of business 3 years ago. You can't use the plugin. It will not move forward, because as WordPress goes along, it's always moving forward. As it moves forward, you've got to keep up. If you don't keep up, then things begin to break or become where there could be security issues. So WordPress has got some challenges. Just think those through. But WordPress has a lot of freedom and flexibility. You can do lots of things with it. For those who don't want to go that route, Wix is a great platform. Squarespace. We've built probably most of the sites we built recently through different projects are done through Squarespace. You're not going to have great control over design. If you want 5 boxes up here and it's only got 3, you either got to hire somebody who knows how to go into the back-end code and do that, or you figure out how to get by with 3. And the kind of same thing goes with e-commerce. There's a product called Shopify. It's a platform. I absolutely love Shopify. I had a client who we put them on that. They sold dresses. They were doing $30,000 or $40,000 a year. 2 years later, they're doing $7 or $8 million a year using Shopify as a platform. The big beauty to Shopify for e-commerce is that it plugs in into Instagram and into Facebook. So you can actually create shopping experiences on those platforms, which nobody else at this point is doing. So Shopify is great. There's drawbacks to all of these. Wix and Squarespace are going to be flat monthly fees. The SSLs are included, but you're going to have design limitations. Shopify is fantastic. WooCommerce, I put that is an e-commerce plugin for WordPress. So just keep in mind, you can actually do e-commerce on WordPress, but you may have some limitations there as time goes on. Again, I could probably talk for hours about this particular slide. And if you have questions, you can email me or bring them up later. I'll be happy to answer what I can. The question, should I do it myself or hire it done? I always think it's funny when somebody says, I build websites. My next question is, well, what are you? It's kind of like, are you a photographer? Are you a copywriter? Are you a graphic designer? Are you a web developer? Are you a marketing consultant? Anybody can build websites. The question is going to be, how do you want to maintain going forward? I definitely believe that if you're trying to do it all yourself, there's a left brain, right brain going on. I could almost always tell when somebody come to my office and they'd say, look what I did. And I could look at the website and I think that's a designer, because they're going to tell you how pretty it is. Now it takes 2 minutes to load the thing, and they're going to tell you it's great, it does all these things, and it's immersive, and the color tones. A programmer walks in and goes, look what I did. And it's like, it loads in 2 seconds, but it's only in like 3 colors. So you've got to find the balance. And all these people who I've listed, anybody can help you. You just got to figure out what you're good at, where your desire is, and what you really need help with. I've worked with all these guys. I've had a bunch of these guys on my staff in the past. I think the most important guy today is a good graphic designer. And I think the next most important person is a good copywriter who can help you get the right words in. A web developer these days, somebody who can build the site and give you the keys. You're still going to be kind of chained to them a little bit as you want to make changes. So just think through those things and find out what somebody's what their background is and their disciplines are. If they're a really good photographer, that's great. They're going to take really good images. It's going to look really good, but it may load slow. So there's trade-offs with everybody. Okay, big slide. I kind of talked about this when I opened. The websites used to be the center of the universe. Now there's data. Now you've got data spread out everywhere. This is important to think about as you move forward. Think about where you're putting information, because if you post one thing on LinkedIn, does it match what's on Twitter? Does it match what's in Facebook? Does it match what's on your website? You've got an obligation to make sure that you've got parity of your information you're putting out, especially if you make emergency adjustments. So down here in Fairhope, we had a lot of hurricanes. And as a result of hurricanes, we had a lot of people change their business hours or be closed or had no power for a week. So you need to think about where are you going to share that information with people? If it's on your website, you change it there, but not on Facebook. Well, I don't know which one's correct. So just think about all the places you're publishing information about your company so you can adjust it as you need to do that. First impressions matter. We call it the grunt test in StoryBrand. I need to look at your website and in 3 to 5 seconds know what you do. If I can't figure out what you do in 3 to 5 seconds, I go to the next guy. Very few people, yourselves included, if you think about how you use the web, if you search for a solution for a problem, you go to Google, you type it in, you find a website, you click it, and you go, I don't know what these people do. I'm on to the next one, because there's a whole world of answers and some other people who came up in the search. If the first guy doesn't work, you go to the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. So the world's not going to just knock on your door and then we hope that they figure out, you're the right solution. Everything else in the website is window dressing. It's all about to reinforce the thing of buy from me. Make your call to action stand out. Big red flashing buttons. Buy now, buy now, buy now. Top right is where anything that you do to do business with you needs to be in the top right-hand corner in a big call out, stand out box that says, click here if you want to do business with me. Everything else we're talking about is designed to reinforce that thing to happen. So as you're adding things to the site, use the same words: buy now, shop now, set appointment, contact us. When you start saying, get involved, read more, connect with me, like, I don't know which I'm doing. So make them all consistent. It needs to be very, very clear. Don't be afraid to ask for the business. They're on your website because they're there to solve a problem. If you can solve the problem, make it easy to get in touch with you. Those of you who sell things online, then here's the product. Click to buy, put it in the cart, do whatever. If they need to set an appointment with you or need to see you or talk to you, make that so easy to do. It's one click away. No website should be more than 2 or 3 clicks deep, but really your call to action should be one click on every single page. Make sure I know how to find you. When you create content, think about SEO, and I've got a slide about SEO in a minute, but you need to think about the pages you create and what are they actually doing. Make sure things are staying updated. Photos should be crisp and clean. I have had so many people come to me with fuzzy iPhone pictures of their lobby and let me put them on their website. And it's like, that doesn't represent you really well. Find things that represent you really, really well. We want to show people having used your product. I do not want to see somebody getting knee surgery. I want to see them walking with their wife on a street, happy next to the coast, having had the benefit of having a knee surgery. I don't really want to watch somebody making sausage. I just want to show me a picture of breakfast, right? Happy people having benefited from using your products. A lot of people stick pictures of their building on their website. The only place that should go is like on the directions page, like a map page. I have had dentists put a picture of downtown Birmingham on their website. I'm like, you don't sell commercial real estate. Get the building off the website. Happy, smiling people. That's what we're trying to sell. One thing also I point out here is make sure you check your process. Where are your leads going? I've had several times people tell me the website's not working. We go online, we fill out the form, we hit the submit button, it submits, my job is done. But then we find out that they've got a spam filter blocking the form from coming to them. The person who it was going to is no longer there. My favorite is when you call the receptionist, you get passed around and nobody ever calls you back. Check your process. How do you make money, and what obstacles stand in the way of that? And how do we get those things to where it's optimized? At my company, our leads came to us via text message. Wasn't relating on me to check an email or my sales manager to check an email. It was instantaneous. As soon as somebody submitted it off the website, we had it on our phone. I could read it. I could assign it immediately to a salesperson. Google calls it the speed to the lead, which means that they said that with real estate, people were 85% more likely to go with the first person they talk to. Well, let's be first. What do you do? What can you do to make sure that as soon as somebody is at the peak of interest, they've just given you the name and email address and phone number and hit the enter button, how fast can you talk to them? And so everything else needs to be peeled away until you get to make sure that's the way you want it. Again, I put on here, it's never going to be perfect. Websites will always be changing. You'll always need to add and wanting to add things. And also make sure that your site's got ADA compliance, HIPAA compliance, GDR, which is, hey, cookies, we're going to think if you keep using our site, you're okay. All that stuff's got to be there. Blogs are a touchy subject with me. Blogs are for people. Human beings blog about their life. It's a web log. It's like a diary. A blog on a business website is actually company news. You could call it a blog, but who wants to read a blog about car dealerships, right? Instead, call it news or come up with some kind of neat way or tips or something. Make it interesting, make it timely. If your content, if you're not producing lots of it, take the timestamps off. I won't voluntarily read a blog post from 2 years ago. So if you take the timestamps off and you try to make it evergreen, the content can live for a long, long time. And also, if you do a blog, think about how you want interaction to work. Do you want people to have to be able to make comments? Do you want to have to approve comments they make? Can they share it? I personally don't believe that you should let people make comments. I have had to remove lots of comments that didn't belong in public from people's websites for churches. So think through that a little bit. ADA accessibility. This one's fast. It's called WCAG 2.1 AA, which is a fancy name for saying they're still trying to figure this out. You can use tools and plugins. It's not a get out of jail free card. Just really think about how somebody uses your website. And if they're blind, how can you serve them? Even as simple as put at the bottom and saying accessibility. If it goes to a page that says, hey, if you have trouble, call this number, we're going to help you. That's fine. But there's some easy wins. Like if you do videos, make sure they have text on them. So they have closed captioning so people can actually read the video if they can't hear. If you've got things that are contrasting in color, that's a problem. If it's the color contrast is off and I can't read it, it's not much use to me. So there's some easy wins in there. Okay, I'm gonna move quicker because I want to make sure I leave time for Nicole. E-commerce, lots of things going on here. Main thing that I see people struggle with is shipping. Before you start building a site, think through how you're going to ship it. If you're buying an online product or service, that's great, but make sure your shopping cart will support that. Again, Shopify integrates easily with Facebook and Instagram. Not everybody does that. And also think through your credit card processing. You can do PayPal, Venmo, Visa, American Express, kind of whatever you want. Sometimes the problem is the easier it is to integrate, like Shopify, the more you're going to pay in fees. That's just part of doing business. You're going to charge credit cards. Somebody's going to get a piece of the action somewhere along the way. So just really shop that around and think through how you're going to do that. Google Analytics is free. It's the most important piece of code on your website. You can go to google.com/analytics, set up an account. You'll get a piece of code. They show you how to put it on your website. Once you do that, you begin seeing great information about everybody who comes to your site, what they've seen, how long they've been there, where they came from. You cannot tell who they are. I don't think everybody wants people knowing exactly what every website they ever went to, but this does allow you to begin to start seeing where they come from, how they interact with your site, And you can create dashboards, which are really cool. And you find things that are important to you. And you can actually set those dashboards to email to you automatically at any period of time. So if you want to get it weekly, monthly, if you want to compare data between periods, you can do that. One thing that you can set up inside Google Analytics is conversion tracking. There's a whole little wizard on how to do that. And just periodically check and make sure it's working. Sometimes code changes or something gets deprecated and it won't be tracking anymore. But conversion tracking actually lets you know what you're doing is working. There's also a cool thing called a Facebook tracking pixel that you can add to your website that gives you a whole lot of information that Facebook knows about your website visitors if that pixel's there. So when you go to market to them, you'll learn a lot more about that. Okay, real quick, Google listings and reviews, really important. If you have a business, it's not in Google yet, google.com/business, look for your listing. If you don't see it, you can create it. This is a place to put as much as you can. Update it frequently, make these changes. This is the listing. If you type in pizza place near me, this is what shows up. And so get things on there. That's one of those ones that will matter to you in the long run. Ask for reviews from friends, from families, from customers, from anybody you can get to give you a good review. It does matter. Google will rate you and rank you based on these reviews. Don't try to sell giveaway services for good reviews. They'll find out and they'll ding you. The other thing too here is if you do get bad reviews, plan in advance how you're going to respond to it. Know what your policy is. Don't act out of emotion. Generally, it's just like, hey, we're sorry you had a bad experience. I'm the owner. Contact me directly, and I'll make sure it's fixed. But if you try to argue back with them, it just turns ugly. So just be thinking about ways to not feed the trolls. SEO, again, a topic I could probably talk about for hours. It's an easy way to spend a lot of money without actually seeing where it goes. But the reality is, think about, are you really needing search engine optimization? I have a friend who sells PPE masks. There's no way we're going to optimize that for search because the competition's so crazy. I've got a friend of mine who has a restaurant down here, and she's like, well, can we optimize for hamburger? No, we cannot optimize for hamburger. We can optimize for gluten-free menu options or family menu options or things like that, but we can't optimize around hamburger because it's just going to be too hard to be competitive. If you sell chicken wings, Hooters will beat you every time. That's just the way it is. So before you spend a lot of money there, think about the true benefit and how it will work for you. I think that SEO today for a small business that's got a lot of competition, it's easier to try to win the battle elsewhere and get lift naturally. SEO is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's just little changes over time. Mobile is treated differently. So if you have a website, make sure it's mobile optimized, and that's where the page speed will matter. Make sure you're not doing things that can get you in trouble, like keyword stuffing. So it's not like DUI attorneys in Birmingham, Alabama really love how we help defend their DUIs. If you have a DUI and need a DUI attorney, please contact our expert DUI attorneys. They will ding you for that. Replication of content will get you dinged. Worst thing that happens in the world is you get banned. It is not a right or a law that you are on Google. Volvo got kicked off Google for doing some things that were not right and argued with the court to get back on. And the court said, no, Google's a private industry and they don't want to list you. They don't have to. There are other search engines. I kind of forget what they are. I think Yahoo's one. Play to those guys too. Check and see where you rank. You may be surprised you might be getting killed on Google, but are killing it on Bing. Just be aware of them. Email marketing, cheapest and fastest way to reach people who already do business with you. Make sure you're following canned spam rules. If somebody wants off the list, get them off the list. They have a potential to come after you if you don't. MailChimp is probably my favorite tool. It's free, it offers a free trial. It will show you open rates. It shows you how many times somebody opened an email. It shows you if they forward it. All that stuff's there. Make sure you track everything. And also, I just tell people, make a plan for email. If you're going to send an email out, for the next 6 months, go ahead and know what days, set the subject line, set the titles, figure out what you want to say. Don't make it reactionary because most people go, oh, it's Thanksgiving next week. I probably should do an email blast. Nope, it should have been planned 3 months ago. So try to think in advance and get these things scheduled up. And email can really, really move the needle for you faster than anything else. Google ads. Google ads come in 2 flavors, search ads and paid ads, and they pretty much go by the highest bidder. Your ads can be super, super targeted, but it's easy to spend a lot of money really, really fast. Again, ads that get lots of clicks that don't convert over to what you want them to do is not a win. If you get 1,000 people on your site who you spend $1 to get each one of them there, but nobody filled out your contact form, is a win for Google. It's not a win for you. So you've got to watch what's converting. Retargeting is super cool. It's almost a no-brainer. That's the ads that follow you around if you've been and looked at shoes, and then the next 5 days you see ads for shoes. It's really there. Google Primer is a great tool. It's an app on your phone and it's free. And it kind of walks you through a lot of the Google stuff and positions. Highly recommend it. It's quick and easy, 3 to 5 minute lessons. You can kind of do at your own speed and it's great. I'll also remind people that YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. It's a great place for videos and video ads. So if people are looking for something like how to fix a dishwasher, great place for you to advertise your appliance business. So I think that's it, except for one more thing about where to buy ads. Yelp, LinkedIn, social media outlets, which she's going to talk about in a second, but local media, newspaper, radio, sometimes they'll have opportunities for you to place ads on their websites or in their emails. But just really think where people are in their buying mode. Awareness, consideration, purchase are the 3 big ones for the web. Retention and advocacy, that's where after email marketing can help and some things you can do later. But for right now, where are they in that? Most people are going to be in awareness, off of an ad. They move into consideration. They're looking at you against other people, and purchase all have to be easy. And that's it for me.
All right. Thank you, David. You want to go ahead and exit out, stop sharing. We have Nicole left, and I want to really point out one quick thing. So listen to all of our attendees. This might be the week where we might go over the 2 hours. And the reason is Nicole's got some really important stuff to cover. She's going to be talking about social media and your social media marketing. She's got really good content for us. David's stuff was fire, and I alone have like a bunch of questions for David. And Matt had great content too. So I want to make sure you guys put your questions in the Q&A. I would be absolutely stunned if you all made it through all 3 of these presentations with 0 questions, because there's been a lot of stuff covered. And listen, I've been doing this stuff for a long time and I have questions. I have like 4 questions for David alone. So put your questions in the Q&A. I want to make sure they get in there. We want to give Nicole all of the time that she needs. I understand if y'all have to drop off at the top of the hour, but hopefully you don't, because she's going to cover some important stuff. And thanks again, David. And Nicole, it's all you.
I'm coming. Okay. And I'm going to share my screen. Share. Give me a second. Mine's a little bit tricky of a share.
Take your time. It's okay.
Yeah. You're seeing that. And new share. Why is it not sharing the Zoom? Okay. Here we go. Sorry, guys. Boy. Okay. Corey helped me out today, and we got it. And so it was working earlier, and now
so you just need to share your screen through your desktop Zoom.
Yeah. Okay.
And I will just make sure that's what everybody's looking at.
It was set up for that, and now for some reason
You were there for a second.
I was.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I'm hitting share, and I say my entire screen, share.
There you go.
Yep. There. Now just click on your PowerPoint and just share that. There you go.
Okay, you're seeing it. There we go. Okay, thank you all. Okay. Okay, here we go. All right, welcome. Thanks for the introduction. Sorry for the delay. I will speed through as fast as David, hopefully, so we can get through all of the content. What I'd like to do is start us off fresh in a, set the stage for, the next 20 minutes or so about social media. Put you in the right frame of mind for social media. It's not hard. Anybody can do social media. Like the slide says, the key to social media is to be social. And it's not scary, it's free. So how many marketing services out there can you do for free? And it's accessible to everyone, and almost anyone can do it. So if you're not doing it for your business already, you're likely doing it in your personal life, and you can leverage a lot of what you do on social media personally in your business as well. I will be going over some basic principles of social media, why it's important, how to get started, and provide some helpful resources you can use after the session, because we will be throwing a lot at you today. In preparing for this presentation, I watched some videos of some social media experts out there. You may be familiar with some of the names out there, but Ted Rubin, he's a leading social media strategist. Down the Wind, she's the publisher of BuzzFeed. Marie Forleo and Seth Godin, they're two best-selling authors, entrepreneurs, and marketing geniuses, that, at least in my book. Seth Godin wrote the book, What is Marketing? And these experts have tons of content out there available if you wanted to research it, but I'm hoping to bring some highlights to you today that you can put into practice for your small business. Downwind, the publisher of BuzzFeed, says, a successful social media strategy relies on creating and consistently posting thoughtful content, measuring performance through KPIs, and engaging with the audience. So think about the job that your content is doing for the reader. Is it funny? Does it bring humor to their lives? Do they identify with the content that you're posting? Does it help them connect and become part of a community, which is so important today when we're all freaking isolated anyway? So does it help them do something, help them learn something, tell them something about themselves or another person? And then how does it make them feel? This kind of has been a recurring theme tonight in marketing. It's not about what you do for what you do. It's about how you make the other person feel and how they feel about your brand and about your product or your service. So always remember the human connection when you're doing your social media. Two of my favorite and simple quotes that Seth Godin said in an interview was, content powers SEO, and conversation is the best content. So David just talked about SEO and how important it is. And, it could be too expensive to invest in, but if you can just get the conversation started on social media, that's huge in the SEO world. So everything is content: blogs, videos, photos, podcasts. The content that you put out there consistently is what's going to position you better in Google search. So as a startup or a business looking to grow its social media presence, do something that gets people's attention. Create content, be a resource, start the conversation, be valuable. Even if it isn't content that you're producing, you can share someone else's. As long as it's going to bring value to your audience, share it, as long as it's allowed. But the amount of content that needs to be produced is endless in order for you to stay up with everything. So you can't do it alone. So empower your employees to create content, since they're the ones on the front lines. And, ask your customers to share content as well. That goes miles and miles. If they purchased a product, or you saved them money, or, you did a haircut for them and do, whatever it is, ask them to, mention you in their social media. It will be huge. And these are powerful content producers that can't be overlooked. I was going to ask a question, but I'm just going to move on. I was going to ask how many people are doing social media for business right now, but really the whole point is whether you are or you aren't, the first 10 concept will apply. You need to focus on how do you get started? Everybody wants to know, how do you get started? How do you get the word out? And you really need to focus on the smallest viable market and serve that market really well. I posted a quote on social media recently, actually on SB Pace, that says, when you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. So this first 10 concept, I think, is really a good place to start. You don't have to start huge. If you find 10 people, 10 people who trust you, respect you, need you, listen to you. If those 10 people love what you do, they're going to tell others. If these 10 people don't love it, you either need to make your product or service better or find the right people to connect with. Don't waste your time. But if you find those right 10 people, they're going to help you get the word out and spread that. The value proposition of social media, if you don't know it already, and if we haven't shoved it down your throats tonight enough, it's a powerful tool. But the value proposition is that social media brings, extends beyond productivity and into interactivity. It provides a two-way access to empower humans to engage. It's a great way to build thought leadership, to extend your brand, and to maintain customer engagement through conversations with your customers. So the key things here are conversations with your customers. When planning your social media strategy, the first things to consider are your vision and goals. Once your vision is clear, you will be able to map out what you need to do to make it a reality. From there, you can set clear goals. You have a vision for your business. This should also apply to your social media. Having clear goals can make all the difference. So you've all heard the acronym SMART in business, I'm sure, but make them specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and put a time frame on them. What is it that you want your social media to achieve? This is essential to be able to evaluate your social media efforts. So if they're not measurable, you can't evaluate what's working and what's not. So really, this is a really important step in your social media strategy. I think we've talked about this also, about the first impressions of your brand. Well, social media is, you've got to make a great impression on social media as well. You wouldn't want to send somebody to an empty website that contains no information, or into a store with no products. So make sure your profiles on your social media pages say who you are. People know who you are. You don't want them to leave to go to the next person. And include a link to or contact information in those profiles. So people, once they get to know you on your channel, they know how to contact you. People turn to social media to check the legitimacy of a brand. Does the brand care enough to post social pages relevant updates on their products or articles pertaining to their brand image? Do they care enough to respond to customer complaints? And how did they handle those complaints? This is a critical part of earning customers' trust in your brand. So if they feel they'll be taken care of as a customer, then when they see how you've responded on social media, they're going to be more likely to reach out and contact you on your website or a phone call or whatever. Your target audience. Once you fully understand your goals, then you have to look at just who you are targeting on social media. You have to be really specific and detailed here. Growth in all areas will happen if you're speaking to the right people. Understanding which social platform your ideal customer uses is an important step. So if you haven't already created, we've talked about this several times throughout the Academy, but your ideal customer avatar, you should start there. And from there, you can map out your social media approach, which platforms you'll be on, when you want to do this, the type of content you're going to deliver, and your voice that you will want to have throughout your whole social strategy. I found a customer avatar worksheet that you can reference later on if you haven't done one already. This was from Digital Marker. I just downloaded one, but there's tons out there, but it could give you a jump start on creating that. So the platforms, make sure you focus on the platforms that your clients use. It doesn't matter how well you do something. If you're in the wrong place, it's not going to work. So sending the right message in the right place is very important. It's worth remembering that each platform is different, and the content that you post on it should be also. You can leverage the same concept, the same image, but how you position it on each of those platforms does need to be relevant to the platform and to the audience that you're delivering that message to. So, and then make sure that you're where your clients are. How do you know which platform is right for your product or service? Well, you're going to have to do some homework on that yourselves to figure that out and know who your demographics are. But at the end of this presentation, I do include an article link by Forbes that says the 13 top tips for choosing the right social media platform for your business. So I won't get into all 13 tips, but you have to consider the nature of your business. Facebook and Instagram help you gain visibility, visually engage, and interact with clients. LinkedIn helps target current and potential clients and builds a personal connection. And YouTube can be used by any business and you can interact and share. And Google loves YouTube. And it actually adds authenticity to your brand. So, you want to look at the demographics of each platform to see where your audience will be. But I would think if you're, promoting something to the younger demographics, you would want to be on Snapchat. If you're selling women's clothing or a women's fitness program, you're going to want to be on Pinterest and probably Facebook and Instagram. But there's more details that you can look up at the end of this. So another important step in your social media strategy is to research what your competitors are doing. Check each of their social pages, see what content they're posting, how often they're doing so, and how many users are engaging in their content. Once you conclude which platform is yielding the greatest results for them, then you might want to make sure that that's the place that you focus your efforts on. So it can give you such great insight by researching your competitors. Another thing to look at is hashtags. You see them on social media posts. They actually have a job and do something. So you want to do a search either on Google or in the platform themselves to see who is searching whatever product or service or feeling or whatever word that you think would resonate to get you found more often. They're really helpful to use. Then a critical step in all of these are kind of critical steps, but really a social media content calendar is super necessary. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be a simple table in Word or Excel, but this is going to help you ensure that you are posting relevant, engaging content and that you're not repeating content too often and that you don't have too many links back to your website. The 80-20 rule or 20-80 rule recommends that no more than 1 in 5 posts contain a link back to your site or your product or service. That's a general rule. I think sometimes you can get away with doing more than that because I think your followers and your customers are loyal to you. So if it doesn't apply to them, they'll just scroll through and hopefully the other content that engages them, will keep them there. But it's just a good rule to keep in mind that you don't want to constantly be, promoting your products and services. Corey and Julie did a podcast with Lisa Cutter. She's the social media director from Amp Up My Biz. It's a great podcast. It was in our email setup this week. So if you haven't watched it, you can, or listen to it, excuse me, you can, but she offered a free downloadable 90-day content calendar. So I've included the link to that at the end of this presentation as well. And it's a really good thing to use. It's a great tool. And then as far as timing goes for social media, post as often as you have engaging, entertaining, or useful content to share. There is data out there that's been compiled to show the best times, which days, the frequency of posts per platform. But I think you just need to figure out when your audience is most likely to see and engage with your content by testing different methods yourself and seeing what gets the most likes, shares, comments, click-throughs, and then focus on that and use that strategy going forward. Automation tools. So if social media seems overwhelming, you guys are already busy as business owners with day-to-day processes and everything you have to get done. Automation tools can save you a ton of time. And there's many out there. I've just listed a few. I personally use Hootsuite, and I love that. It's a really helpful tool, but anything that can help you automate the social media process can give you more time back in your day to do the things you need to be doing. So it allows you to post a number of posts per day, and you can schedule which time that they would be dropped. And so if you do it ahead of time, you can know that your customers or your viewers or audience will be getting drip fed some messages throughout the day that they can engage with. So, and it helps you be consistent, which is vital to social media following. If you don't have time to post consistently, you can consider to outsource your social media management. And again, also leverage your employees and your customers trying to get that content out there. Analytics and data. As a business owner, you need to observe what's actually working and provide more of that. So David just talked about Google Analytics. There's analytics for your social media as well. So you want to see what posts are achieving the best and performing the best for you. You can look in your Google Analytics, or actually the platforms that I just mentioned, the tools, they have analytics built into them as well. So as you review that data, look at the posts that have received the most likes, comments, and shares, and produce more along those lines. And you'll also see what times perform the best as well. So your social media is not something you can set and forget. It should always be evolving. Again, I think that's another recurring theme with marketing in general. It's a dynamic tool, and it has to develop and grow as your brand grows, as your followers grow, as you learn more about your business. So just, keep working to engage your customers. That's the key here. And be sure to respond to comments and questions in a timely manner. It's going to help build trust and more engagement. I don't think there's any question that we didn't know how big social media is, but I did put this slide in here about the statistics. I found it mind-blowing that users spend on average of 3 hours per day on social media networks and messaging. That's a lot of time to be on it, but now you see why you have to be out. Your business has to be on social media. It's where your customers are. That's where they're spending time. So you just need to figure out ways to break through the noise and make sure that you have a voice out there and they can find you and find your products. So I think I sped through faster than my 20 minutes. I hope I still didn't. I hope I covered the pieces I wanted to for the most part. But in conclusion, remember, the key to social media is to be social, keep your followers engaged, provide them with value, always be thinking how you can answer the question, what's in it for the customer. And the nice thing about social media, I think also David said this in his, is that it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. and follow through on the promises that you make. So that is key. And I think somebody asked in the chat, what the right words are to say and how do they engage. And I found this interesting that Seth Godin wrote. He said he has written 7,400 blog posts, and he says he's only done 4 perfect ones. So if you put enough bad ideas out into the world, sooner or later, your brain will wake up and the good ideas will come. No one gets plumber's block. They simply do the work. So, and the other thing about social media that I mentioned, that it's free, but it also is the one area in business where you don't have to outspend your competitors to beat them. You just have to find, what's going to resonate with your customers. The rest of the slides are my resource slides. I included 2 graphics that we use on the SB Pace page that could help be a snapshot for, just a nice little reference tool that you could use when you're planning your social media strategy. And then some resources that I listed here. I created 2 PDFs that you can download that we'll put it in Kartra, I think, at the end. One is a social media checklist, and another one is 33 content ideas to improve engagement. And as I was saying, the content calendar is super important. Even if you took one idea from this content calendar, you'd have, a post for every day and then some. So, it could be FAQs or a before and after picture or a customer testimonial or a how-to. Like they're endless, and I think they will be good things to jog your creativity and have a social post out there. And then these are the articles that I mentioned, and some that I didn't mention, but I still think they might be interesting to look at. One is the Social Media for Small Business, a guide for 2021 and beyond, because with the way of the world and the fact that we're in another possible shutdown and everything else, like social is here to stay and becoming more important, and the best way that you can stay connected with your customers. So you have to be in the game, play the game. So thank you for your time, and I'm gonna stop there. And I think we might even have, oh, look at that, 10 minutes to ask questions. So thank you.
We do. And Josh, post your question in the Q&A, please, instead of in the chat. Corey, can we get everybody on screen now? Nicole, once you can exit out of your presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
One second.
In. Faces up.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I got
Yeah, you're good.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, you're good. I can see everybody.
Okay, perfect.
So this was good. I'm trying to move in front of the light here. So that's so
there we are.
Yeah, thank you. This was great content tonight. We covered a lot of things, a lot of information. So get to I've got some questions, and hopefully as we go through the ones that are in here, some people will ask some more. But Sean wants to know, he said his company has avoided, this is for Nicole, his company has avoided Facebook and focused on Instagram and LinkedIn with success. Can he continue to avoid Facebook?
I believe yes, you can. If your customers aren't there and you've had success in these other 2 platforms, I would say keep focusing on what is working. I do think you don't have to be on every platform, and that's what the experts have said as well. So you could focus on one as well, but I think you'll be fine with that.
Yeah, I think the key is to know where your customers are hanging out, and that's where you should be focusing, right? So if you know who your ideal customer is, and you have built out that avatar, then you know where they're hanging out, and that's the platform that you should go after. Mm-hmm. Another one for Nicole, if you were launching an e-commerce business in, let's say, 12 days, what would be a good number of posts per day to post leading up to that launch?
So they say it's not about quantity, it's about the quality of the post. So, you don't want to be spammy. And like I did say in my presentation here, it's about if you do have a message and it's engaging and you have information to get out there, I would say I don't know if there's a number. I just think you have to make sure it's not spammy, but yeah, I think we do 2 posts a day on SB Pace across all social platforms. And then I think we even do even more than that, you know, because Julie intersperses different things as well. So, and it's going to be what resonates with your customers. But I don't have a number, but you just want to be careful. You got to play the balance of, you know, not being spammy, but I don't think there'd be anything wrong with 3 posts a day leading up to that, especially if it's building anticipation and you can get people to engage that way, you know. So
and Josh did say he's got a ton of questions for David. He's going to reach out personally on those. I have a couple of questions for David. My first one being this: we were told recently by somebody that until you hit like year 2 of your business, that SEO and Google Analytics really don't come into play. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because I know you covered that in your presentation.
I would say that the analytics absolutely does come into play, because analytics is going to tell you what you're doing and what the reaction to that stuff is. You don't have comparative data to know how many visitors did I get this year versus last year, but you would know, well, I did an email blast and here's what happened, especially with conversion tracking. So if you're tracking the number of people who downloaded a PDF or who enrolled for something or signed up for something, you can do that on day 1. For SEO, I really think it depends. If you're a personal injury attorney, car accidents is going to be impossible to get rated for. But if you specialize in turtle attacks, there's probably not that much competition. It may be easy to go in there and become SEO'd around turtle attacks. So I would say that
turtle as in like Teenage Mutant Ninja.
Absolutely. So it depends on the competition that's out there. So if you're doing something unique, then SEO will play in your favor, or if you've got a unique value proposition. So for instance, my friends who have the restaurant, we can't get found for hamburger, but we can get found for gluten-free menu, gluten-free restaurant, gluten-free options at the beach. Gluten-free is nowhere near as competitive as the word hamburger. So finding those little keywords that you can be indexed under, something unique, your unique value proposition can help you. And you can create blog posts to support that, and you can go on social media to support that. So for my friends, we wrote a blog post about why they wanted to add a gluten-free menu. We did social media posts around a family who said they were so excited to get to go to the restaurant and get gluten-free food. And we did a little thing with a chef who talked about the procedures they go through to make sure that the gluten-free chain of custody is kept very pristine and there's no cross-contamination with their menu. So you support those ideas. Now, if you type in gluten-free menu and they get found, probably can't get found for hamburger. Okay. But we got there under gluten-free. And there's also a neat tool called Google Trends. And Google Trends will tell you how often certain things are searched. So if you look at something like COVID-19, a year ago, nobody searched for it. Today, it's going to be off the charts. So certain things, or hydroxyquinoline or whatever, you can see the trends that are used in searches to make decisions about what you want to put out there.
Perfect. Okay. I've got another question here. So we're starting a lawnmower business. There are none in the entire state for this type of lawnmower. So we're hoping to be very successful. We have several videos showing this mower to be able to be used on all terrains. Are videos like this a good thing to post when starting out? I would assume that is for Nicole, but it could be for David as well, or Matt, because it's branding.
Matt, cool logo for it. It's more Nicole, but I would say that yes, if you put it on YouTube and you put some things around there that were, descriptions were, check out how our lawnmower handles this awesome, this hard terrain, then you back it up in social saying, check out the video. I mean, it needs to be intermingled, but yeah, more content.
And I would jump in there and say absolutely,
yes.
Especially if you're saying there's none in the entire state for this type of lawnmower, then that certainly differentiates you from all of your other lawnmower competitors. So you're automatically giving yourself some space in the marketplace.
Great. Okay. Matt answered this one or responded to it, but I want to call it out. So I gotta go dig through the answered questions, Matt. Matt, you're the
Sorry.
man. Matt has created a logo for us that has meaning to what our brand is. He created it with great thought and care. I cannot believe that you would throw away a marketing opportunity like that by just responding.
I didn't realize it was going to disappear.
That was from Josh, who may or may not have a site, a new business launching in 12 days. Suzanne, did that answer your question? You good? I'm going to assume yes, because you wrote thank you in there. Let's see. Cheryl wants to know, consistent cross promotion of the same material is key then, correct? Following up on the lawnmower question.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's consistent, but you do like make sure that how your voice on each of the platforms or however you're doing it is the way that it should be positioned. So not the same content, because you could get dinged for the same content across all platforms. So you have to switch it up a little bit. You can say the same points, but you have to change the messaging a little bit if you're cross promoting on different platforms.
Right. So a couple of quick things that I want to cover that came up tonight that I feel like deserve a little bit of extra just words around them. Nicole mentioned the tools, and I know she uses Hootsuite because that's what she's using to post for us. There are some platforms that penalize you for using tools to post rather than posting directly on the site. Facebook is one of them. Facebook is super, I'm just going to use the word jerkish, right? And Facebook will find ways to punish you. So does Instagram. Instagram doesn't punish you for using a third-party tool to publish to them, but Instagram will punish you for other things. So the one thing that I would say is make sure that you really understand the platforms that you're publishing to or that you're posting to. So when I say punish you on Facebook, Facebook will show your post to fewer people because you're using a third-party app to publish on Facebook. So you're getting less traffic. You're getting an easier way of posting because you can just schedule and go, but your business is getting less traffic and less people are seeing those posts because they want you interacting directly with their site. It's also how they treat ads. If you create an ad on Facebook and it takes you off of their site, so if I create an ad and Matt sees it and it takes him to our site, or to our site rather than keeping them on Facebook, Facebook will show that ad to fewer people because they want people to stay on their site. So just make sure you really understand why or what is happening and how those sites work, because they can be there can be some nuances to them, and they can also, what can happen very easily, especially on Instagram, is you can be what is referred to as shadow banned, where they will pretty much stop showing your content to anyone. And that has
without
happened.
you knowing that they're not showing you.
Without you knowing, yes. You will go from getting like 10,000 likes on a post to getting like 20. That's how you're going to know that you've been shadow banned. And that's really for violating their policies. And quite honestly, they don't have to tell you what the policy is that you have violated.
Question on that.
Yes, Matt.
So because Instagram and Facebook are now owned by the same people or whatever, they have that functionality. Like I'll create a post in Instagram. Instagram has the functionality for me to create that same post or post that same thing across multiple Instagram accounts that I own. So is there a negative in doing that? And then also the second question is, if I then take that post and use Instagram's operation to share that Instagram post onto my linked Facebook account, do they view that negatively, considering that's all part of their operation?
I don't know the answer. Nicole, do you know when you're publishing the same thing across multiple accounts? I believe they probably punish that, but they do not punish you from taking Instagram straight to Facebook. In fact, they encourage that.
Right.
They want you to do that. They are, and they change their rules really fast. So this is, I don't know if this was mentioned, if this has been mentioned yet at all in any of the classes, but this is really something that everybody needs to keep in mind as you're building your business. And I know that we have talked to Josh about this numerous times as he's building out his business, is you want to keep, and David might be a really good person to speak on this, you want to ensure that you are collecting and gathering your customer information and not just interacting with people on Facebook and Instagram. Because if you are only interacting on Facebook and Instagram or Twitter or wherever, that platform owns your customers. You don't own your customers, they do. And if they change their logarithms, you are going to lose business and you have no control over it. So you need to make sure that you own your customers and that you have their information. And I don't know, David, do you want to say anything else?
Yeah, I would make sure that you, anything you're out there doing, find a way to get their email address that you have, find a way to get them onto your website at some point, to engage with you, to download a document, to watch a video, to do something. Because I live in a small town, like it's like Mayberry around here sometimes, and I have people who have domain names that go to Facebook pages, and I'm like, you realize that if I wanted to advertise a competing business on your page, I could do it, because you can go there, you could Facebook will sell ad space to the highest bidder, and they'll have things called businesses that are like this one. If you're looking for a barbecue restaurant, if you look right down the page, it'll say places that are just like this, and there's 4 more barbecue restaurants. So driving them to Facebook is a good way to it's a great way to get reaction, but it's not a great way to build on. And like they said, they can change their rules. Their rules change around the election a lot. My rule of thumb, by the way, is you can't post enough. People scroll through so fast, and there's so much on there. To think that people are gonna actually see and interact with more than one of your ads a day it's probably not likely. I mean, I think you can, as long as it's all different and relevant and new, post. I mean, and another thing we didn't get into, but boost your posts. When you get a good reaction from something, take $20 and do a boosted post. You can target that boost around, if you wanted to find mothers of 6 to 12-year-olds who live in Miami that like the Atlanta Falcons, you can find that on Facebook to do a targeted audience, and spend your money with those people. Don't say, oh, I'll just spend $20 to whoever. A great thing to do, if you have a business that's retail, you can sell gift cards, and you can say, show my ad for gift card to people who are friends of people who like my business. Mm-hmm. So if I own a barbecue restaurant and I say, I'm going to sell gift cards, anybody who likes me, their friends see that ad, and that's the only ones who see it. So there's lots of options in there, but I think finding a combination. I do think, unfortunately, spend a little bit of money on boosting posts. Lets them know you're alive, and I do think you get a most favored nation status when you do that.
That is true. That is very true. And but and one of the things, and I know Corey covers this I think we talked about this in our blog that came out today, how expensive advertising this holiday season on any social platform is going to be ridiculously expensive, highly competitive. So you got to find other ways this holiday season to do it where you're not, because your ad spend will be through the roof and the value you get will be low. And one other thing on this topic is, I don't know if anyone has noticed, but if you have been on Instagram lately, you probably noticed they changed their interface again, where they are really trying to push people to sell their products, your products directly on their site. And I cannot encourage you enough. You need to direct people to your site. Make it easy for people to buy, but don't let your customers live on a social platform. Get their information. It's really important for your business that you do that. We got a couple of more questions in here I want to get to. This one is from Bill Bolton, BB Insurance, who is going to be an industry expert in a couple of weeks on insurance. Mm-hmm. Wants to know, he says, David, you mentioned bad dings you can get on Google. Can you go into more details about what they are? And is there a rule of thumb to avoid getting these? By the way, I grew up next to Fairhope in Spanish Fort.
Oh, good deal. I think we go there that's where all the good restaurants are these days. Okay, so the answer your question is, there's 2 kinds of dings. Google has 200 signals that they look at, over 200, to do weighting on where you rank. Things like an H1 tag, and it's behind the scenes, the headline tag. If you're putting content there, it gets a higher weight or rating from Google because that's a headline. Things like image tags. These are all things that use just to weight how high it's going to rank you, but there's things you can do that will take points away from you. One of the big ones that Volvo got dinged for was putting white text on a white background. So they went through and keyword stuffed all these words onto the bottom of the website in white text with white background, so the humans couldn't see it, but the computers picked it up, a crawler. So my best advice on search engines is think about what a search engine is supposed to do. It's supposed to give people the result to a query they have as fast as possible. If they stop being able to do that, you'll quit using it. Why don't you use Yahoo anymore? Why don't you use Bing? Because they're not good at getting you what you're really trying to find out. Google really doesn't care if they go to your website or not. Now, when they're doing paid ads, they do. But if they can give people the answer without you having to leave Google's little interface, they'll do that. That's why we have Google My Business listings that have the hours. That's why they tried to do menus inside of that. That's why they've done all these things that I don't really have to go to your website if that Google My Business listing is set up for service business or for like a restaurant, because everything I might need is there. That's a real problem because now I can't promote my specials. I can't show off my good pictures. That's why you've got to keep people putting things in there. So just watch the things that would take away from their primary mission in life, which is to serve information to people in a fast way. If every search you went to on Google returned pictures of cats, might be fun for a few days, but you're going to quit using Google. You'll find another way to get information. So their job is to serve the customer. One thing that I did, and I would encourage you if you're interested, take all these platforms, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, all these guys are publicly traded. Go listen to their earnings calls. If you listen to their earnings calls, which are public information, you can hear exactly what their plan is, where their revenue is going to come from for the next quarter and beyond. And that tells you where you can start looking at how to maximize return on those things. So if you listen to the earnings calls, you'll hear Google say, we're putting a lot of emphasis on this because we think that. And you go, well, that's where I'm going to go. Kind of easy when you think of it that way, but do take advantage of those things. A lot of these guys are out there. Facebook said a year ago, we think that in 2 years, our site will be 80% video on the feed. They are moving to video, and you can see it in your feed these days. It's a lot of video. A text gets no attention, but if you start putting pictures in and videos in, it gets more sticky. So,
I have another comment off of probably goes with Nicole's content that she presented. I know at least one of you talked about the outsourcing of your marketing where you could get someone else to do your social media marketing. Great idea. Here's my really strong recommendation is pick somebody who is not only really good at social media marketing, but somebody who will understand and can represent your brand, because you are essentially asking that person to now be the face of your brand on social media. So Nicole is a perfect example for us. And this is just me going to drop some kudos for her. She manages all of our social media for SB Pace. And honestly, if we hadn't said that, I'm guessing most people wouldn't know that, because she really, really gets our brand. She took the time to learn it. She asks questions. She's very thoughtful about how she's creating the content. And Nicole could post in the morning and I could post in the afternoon. And I don't know that anyone would be able to tell the difference over who was doing the posting, because it's very much in alignment with what we do. And so make sure if you're going to outsource social media that you get yourself a Nicole. You need somebody who is really, really good at it and who gets your brand. That's important. That's important, because you don't want to jack up the brand, which, Matt spent so much time talking about. Cheryl asks me, yes, sorry. Did you have a question, Matt? Cheryl asked me if there was a down and dirty link that tells us how each social media platform operates with ads. I'm going to say no, there's none that I'm aware of. And they change it so frequently that I think what you really need to do is connect yourself with an insider, right? So we just happen to have an insider in our network that works very closely with people at Facebook. And so gets the down and dirty. And that's really the only reason that we know. I mean, 9 months ago, I wouldn't have had a clue, but now I know somebody who knows somebody, and that's kind of the key. And it just kind of word of mouth travels, but I don't know that they don't publish anything. They make up the rules as they go. any of that takes care of all of the questions we have. Any final thoughts or comments or anything from David, Nicole, or Matt?
Well, I've got a question, but I'm going to throw it into Slack, and I think that's where the rest of this discussion should happen since we're all on there.
Okay. Just thank you again to the three of you. This was really, really good content, good information. And this is another week where you're going to want to wait. Cheryl says the experts are rock stars. Where we're going to want to, you're going to want to watch the rewind, and we'll see all of you in Slack. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Have
everybody.
a great night.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.